Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm doing a late night discussion. I'm going to be doing 2 movie reviews, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the philosophy of the Bedrock podcast when it comes to reviewing things, just sort of things that I've learned from reviewing over the years. Again, this is a late night discussion, so that means I haven't slept enough, I'm tired, and I'm going to meander. I probably won't stay on topic. I might say the same thing over and over again. But for whatever reason, people sometimes seem to like these. So, and I'm especially forgetful tonight, so don't expect me to remember names or anything like that. I finished the last season of Cobra Kai. I waited because I didn't want to do the thing where I watched 5 episodes and I had to wait for them to put more episodes up. I'm glad I did it that way because I would have gotten really annoyed waiting between I think they did it in clusters of 5, so I would have been very annoyed. I enjoyed it a lot. I would say now that I've seen all the seasons, and I started when it first came out, so I watched it back when it was on YouTube, but I rewatched the whole series again like maybe last summer, shortly before this new season started coming out. I watched it with my wife. And so it was kind of nice being able to introduce it to somebody else. You know, my take now is that the first season is, in my opinion, the first season is the best season. That's the season that's really sort of like kind of more serious. I mean, it's still a comedy, but it really has more heart to it, and it has a clear focus on Johnny and everything. But then as the series goes on, it kind of shifts focus a little bit, which maybe it needs to do in order to rejuvenate itself. But I think that first season just really worked. The second season, I really, especially now, I just do not like. I think the second season is the worst season. Season 3 is better. So season 3 is more like a return to form a little bit. But they just have a lot of, like I like the Okinawa stuff. That stuff I thought was very interesting. Initially, I liked the Kreese background until they got to the snake pit. And then I got really, I wouldn't say upset, but I thought that was a really boneheaded creative decision. I've kind of learned to accept that the show just veers into cheese and you have to sort of embrace the cheese. And there's an element of cheese in Karate Kid that I think works. But I think that really undermines the one thing that worked about Kreese in the show, which is or not in the show, in the movie, which is he was a Vietnam vet, and again, especially if you growing up when this movie came out, which I was a kid when it came out and I saw it in the theater, you understood even though they didn't really get into it, you understood the weight of whatever that guy went through and how that would explain his really bizarre behavior in the first 2 movies. And so it kind of permitted him to be this cartoonishly evil character, but still feel grounded in something. So you imagined him having like real stuff that happened in Vietnam, not snake pit death matches and with some guy pulled right out of Apocalypse Now as his master. I just thought that didn't work. It felt more like I don't know what it felt like a late stage Rambo movie or Chuck Norris MIA movie. Like it just didn't work. The Kreese character really felt more like John Rambo from the from the original First Blood, and over the course of the series, it's like he became Rambo from the sequel, and then morphed into like a Chuck Norris type guy. I don't know. I just didn't like that aspect of it. But either way, I did enjoy the 3rd season. The 4th and 5th season I really liked, and I think that really had to do with Terry Silva entering back into the picture. I hadn't seen those since last summer, so I'm sure I'm getting seasons 4 and 5 all blended together in my head. But I just really liked having Silva in the show. I thought that he worked really well, and so when we got to season 6, I was curious where they were going to go. I had things that I really liked. So I liked how it ended. I liked the redemption story that they gave to Kreese and his moments with Johnny. I didn't like that they had Samantha quit. I didn't like and this is sort of an ongoing. I have two ongoing critiques of the show, and they're not super big deals, but they're things that I'll bitch about while I'm watching it. But it's more a reflection of my own enjoyment of the show. I really like the show, but I get irritated and passionate about these couple of things. So one of them is not the constant, but they always do these massive brawls. The students just start fighting in a shopping mall, at the school. In this season, it was during an actual tournament that was televised. Spoilers going ahead, but one of the characters dies during that brawl. I didn't mind that they killed the character. So spoilers, it's Quan. But I felt like they didn't need a brawl to make that happen. It's a karate tournament. A freak accident during a match could explain it, or somebody fighting too aggressively, and he ends up getting, I used to do Taekwondo, and one of the reasons why Taekwondo practitioners wear helmets in WTF style competition, it's not called WTF anymore because of the acronym, but I can't remember the new acronym. But I used to do WTF Taekwondo, and we had to wear these like foam helmets, and we did that because in the 80s, and one of the guys that I used to train with was at the tournament where this happened, or I don't know if he was a spectator or a competitor. I think it was a nationals event. I can't remember, but somebody died. They got knocked out and they fell back and landed on their head and they died. And that actually happened to me too at a competition, but I had a helmet. But I was told by the paramedic how serious it was, the way that I got knocked. Because if you get knocked out, I was on a wooden floor and I fell back and I hit my head on the wood. But I had, it's like if you get like a standing knockdown and you kind of fall back and land on your head, the weight of it's just really bad to get knocked out that way, especially if you don't have a helmet. And again, these are not like boxing ring types things. So it's like the flooring is a little bit less forgiving of that kind of stuff. But anyway, somebody died, and so the point is they could have easily had something like that happen where Quan gets killed or whoever they need gets killed. They didn't have to have this stuff where, they have these like platforms. They have all these things going, and then they have this mob fight breakout, and it just felt I don't know. I just don't like. I feel like the fight choreography starts breaking down when they do that, because it's almost like. I feel like what happens is they let the stunt choreographers just go crazy during those scenes, and it just kind of feels, I don't know, I just don't like those sequences. But I like the tournament fights and stuff. And so I thought that was an annoyance. The other thing that annoyed me was that the tournament didn't make any sense. The rules of the tournament, like people are changing teams, they get disqualified, but then they come back on a new team. It wasn't particularly clear how the events were just strange for the most part. Like, again, having a giant platform up in the sky. That, I mean, again, I know it's a show, but that's like, even with all the mats underneath, that's just super dangerous. There's no way you could safely do that. And again, I'm probably being nitpicky, but those were the sort of things. The other thing is, I feel like in the original movie, the guy that wrote the script, I think he did karate or something. So when he invented the whole wax on, wax off thing, and all the other things he had Daniel do to sort of prepare his muscles for the movements that he was going to be learning, they translated perfectly. And I feel like, I don't know, and again, I don't know the writer's background, so I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe the writers they haven't trained in anything like that. So, but they understand that that's an aspect of the movies that is part of its DNA, so it has to show up in the show, which I would agree with. But when they have Daniel coming up with his sort of inventive exercises for, sort of surreptitiously getting people to learn karate or train, whatever, they kind of end up really weird. So you have people doing all kinds of like flag catching exercise. It just doesn't translate into what they're doing, which is a sparring tournament. And so, so I just feel like some of that stuff doesn't quite work as well. It could have been more refined. But overall, I like the season. I thought that the ending with Kreese and Terry Silva on the boat was definitely over the top. I would have done it differently. I would have had Kreese redeem Silva. And at the same time, I understand the kind of show it is, and so I could kind of embrace what they did. It's just sort of like as I was watching it, I was like, "This is pretty over the top." Um, the moment I saw the gasoline, I will say though, if they're trying to emulate '80s style, that's definitely an '80s style thing. So you could sort of see that in like a Lethal Weapon movie or something. It fit. It fit. I liked the Chosen. Got ended up with Master Kim, the granddaughter of the headmaster in the Korean place, and I also thought it was interesting seeing a cameo from Elizabeth Hurley. That was very unexpected, and so yeah, it was a good season. I even liked the mystery with Miyagi and his background. I know that felt a little bit. I'm sorry, it wasn't Elizabeth Hurley. It was who am I thinking of? The woman from Saved by the Bell. I got her name wrong. I apologize. But somebody can correct me in the comments. I'll look it up after. But yeah, so I even like that, even though the CGI with Miyagi coming back was a little bit weird. The other thing, and again, this isn't really a criticism. This is just an observation. Cobra Kai is just filled with head cases. They can't compete unless they are given a rousing speech, and they're always getting in their own head. And that's like the last thing that you need to be if you're a competitor at a high level in any sport. If you're that kind of athlete, you're supposed to know how to compartmentalize those things. And so you're not. I get it's cinematic and all that stuff. I'm just talking, but that was one of my observations. But yeah, so I had a fun time watching it, and it was a good send out. That show is one of the few shows that I actually enjoy watching. That sort of, I get that they also target a younger audience, but they are definitely going after people in my age bracket, and it's really rare, I find, to see shows that feel like they're meant for somebody my age that land well. There's been a lot of stuff, and I won't get into any of it because it would just be a whole other episode, but there's been a lot of stuff that's come out that I've just been like, what were they thinking? I'm the target audience and they clearly don't know what I want. So yeah, I was really quite happy with that. I also saw, and again, I might even have, let me get the information on this movie so I don't get any details wrong, because I just saw it. I don't have any notes or anything like that planned, but I saw Saturday Night, the movie about the first episode of Saturday Night Live. I don't know. I'm really on the fence about how I feel about it. I didn't really understand the point. It was like a bunch of impressions, and it was, they captured the feel of going into a new show that might not make it, I guess. And I liked all the actors involved. I liked the guy that played Lorne Michaels. I thought he was like a compelling protagonist for the movie. And he was also maybe one of the more grounded characters in it, because all the other people, it would be like Chevy Chase, but it's not really Chevy Chase. It's Chevy Chase. It's like a parody of a Chevy Chase performance in a movie or sketch. And it was kind of like that for everybody. The only one that maybe wasn't that was John Belushi, who was what is it? Was sort of more brooding and all that stuff, So, but I feel like that's because John Belushi's become like this figure. So they wanted to treat him with like a little bit more pathos or something. But and a lot of the people were very convincing. The woman who played Jane Curtin, I thought, looked and kind of acted like Jane Curtin. Some of them I wasn't so sure about. But just to give you an example, like Andy Kaufman is a character in the movie, and he's playing Foreign Man the whole entire time, even when he's not on stage. So and again, maybe there's some backstory I don't know about where he was like in character the whole time. But that's what everybody's like in the movie. It certainly had some funny moments. And Willem Dafoe is in it. And I thought he did a really good job. He really looked like a 70s executive sort of asshole type guy, and so the look and the feel of the movie was all felt accurate and stuff like that. I just didn't get the point, and I felt agitated for like the first 25 minutes of the movie. Maybe I was just in a bad mood, I don't know, but I also felt like why I didn't understand the need to celebrate. Like I understand, I like Saturday Night Live. I just didn't get it. I don't know. It didn't seem like it just felt a little too self-congratulatory for me or something. I don't know. I just was kind of befuddled by it while I was watching it. And again, it felt like it's all, and again, I was just talking about a movie that is fan service, so maybe, or a show that was fan service and I liked. But that was done maybe in a better way. This felt like fan service in a way that I don't think people are going to remember this movie in 10 or 15 years. I think this movie is going to be completely forgotten. Now, I could be totally wrong, and people should absolutely rag on me and remind me if I am proven wrong and this becomes a classic or something. I will gladly accept that criticism. But it just felt very disposable to me. And yeah, so I didn't enjoy it. But again, I did enjoy a number of the performances. And about midway through, I started to get really into it. So it's not like I hated the movie. I just was like agitated for the first 25 minutes. And then I was kind of like half interested for the next 30. And then for the remainder, I was engaged. But I also was having like constant criticisms in my head as I was watching it. So, and again, I'm just looking it up now, and apparently like a lot of people do not agree with me on this. This, I guess, has a 78% freshness rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It looks like it was largely positive reaction. So I would say, if see it for yourself and make up your own mind. I don't want my opinion influencing your opinion if it's a movie people like, but I just didn't get it. Again, like the guy playing Dan Aykroyd, he's talking like Dan Aykroyd in a sketch. I know Dan Aykroyd kind of talks a little bit like Dan Aykroyd in a sketch in real life too, but not that much. And some of the dialogue felt more like a Saturday Night Live sketch. So and maybe that's the point, but it just felt like a little off to me. And again, I know I'm doing this on the heels of Cobra Kai, which you could probably say a lot of the same things about, but somehow that lands differently with that one, because that's a full on. I mean, this is comedy too, and I will say the guy that played Jim Henson was very convincing, and the guy who played George Carlin was also very. He didn't look like him, but he acted like him. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was, though I will say there was some language. I don't know who wrote this script, but there was some language in there that felt very anachronistic to me. It felt like I don't think people would use that word then. Like they would mention a disease that maybe people now are more aware of, but they weren't aware of as much back then. At least I don't think they were. That kind of thing. Like not anything super obvious or horrible, just like I feel like that doesn't feel like how people would have expressed that concept in that decade. And I could be totally wrong about that. Maybe they researched it, looking at interviews, and it's 100% accurate. But that was my gut response. And so I just wanted to talk also about the philosophy at the podcast. It's not like we have like a set of guiding principles that we follow or anything like that. I don't want to give people the wrong idea. But I feel like I feel like the others, and they can speak for themselves. I'm speaking for myself right now, so don't assume that this reflects people like Joel and Adam and all them who've been on. I've learned, the longer that I've done this, and we've reviewed a lot of movies. Like, I mean, we got like over 600 episodes. They're not all movie reviews, but there's a lot of movie reviews. There's got to be hundreds of movie reviews on there. There's also a bunch on the blog, and one of the things that I really realized my least interest in, the thing that interests me the least when we're talking about movies, is exploration of things like themes and anything that would be kind of like academic, like or overly intellectual. I'm much more interested in the emotional response that I have to different elements in the movie. And I think that, and again, I've been involved in like a number of discussions online about like literature and things like that and how people evaluate it. And I think I've sort of come to this point where I realize like what I don't like is this idea that the thing about art that makes it good is, can I write an essay about it that's 10 pages after I've seen or read this thing? Are there enough ideas in there for me to sustain an academic paper? I think that's maybe the worst possible way to appreciate art. And I think that that's one of the things that is sort of like it's one of the reasons why I don't like a lot of academic approaches to things like literature and things like that. And again, I should say I have more of a history background, so maybe I'm just this curmudgeonly person. But I feel like what makes a movie special isn't that I can list off all of these intellectual properties and not IP, but I mean like these characteristics that have intellectual value that we can sort of chew on and talk about, and having like themes and symbolism. And I'm more interested in how the movie affects me emotionally, and I don't think that it needs to be about these ideas that make like that's not the thing that makes a movie a great work or makes it a classic and something that you want to keep going back to. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't have craftsmanship or anything like that. It should certainly have, like, I like good craftsmanship. But what I'm saying is it's about, when I watch a movie, is my instinct to put that movie right back into the DVD player. And obviously I'm using an anachronistic metaphor because a lot of the times you're just streaming it. But do I have an impulse to slide the player all the way back to the beginning, or click watch again and see it again? And 10 years later, can I go back to it and have another experience watching it, and it still be enriching in some way, where I'm either noticing things about the movie or it's giving me thoughts. And again, and I'm not saying that movies don't have meaning, or that books don't have meaning, but I think that I'm much more interested in having a feeling that I would like to be able to put into words than talking about all these layers of themes and things like that. I mean, I'm not saying that stuff should never be discussed. I just think that we prioritize that stuff so heavily. And, when you hear a song that affects you, it's not because there's like a list of intellectual things that you can sort of comment on about it. Like I know about music, so I can hear a song and I can sort of intelligently evaluate some of the musical elements, but that's not why I'm reacting to it the way I am. That's just stuff that you're sort of observing after the fact. And so I feel like, and maybe again, this is maybe coming from more of a, from a music perspective, because I used to be very involved in music. But that's how I react to all art and all mediums, which is, it's about that emotional response when I hear a moving piece of music, like the Funeral March of Queen Mary or something. I don't care about the ideas that are there. I care about how it affects me, and I don't need there to be this well of concepts in it to keep going back to it and enjoying it. And I don't, so that's sort of what I'm trying to say. And so and again, sometimes we will still talk about these things because they come up. But when we are having podcast discussions about movies, that's always my least favorite aspect of talking about a movie. I'm a lot more interested in emotional reactions to things, and how I felt watching the movie, and what impact a movie has had on me. That's the stuff that interests me. And I think that's also why people go to art. I don't think they go to art to write a 5-page paper. I think they go to art to have a reaction. And that's also why I like to allow our conversations to meander when we're having reviews. So again, I just, maybe I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I don't know. I'm a little bit hostile to literature departments or something, maybe. But it is sort of embedded in how I think about about, you know, any kind of review of music, movies, books, any of that stuff. I really don't like sort of New Yorker style approaches to movie reviews. You know, I think that we can talk about this stuff intelligently without being snobbish or gatekeeping about it. So that's just sort of the, you know, well, that's the other thing is I like to have everybody be able to have their own reaction. I've been watching I always watch, you know, like when I'm watching a movie that I know I'm going to review, I don't look for other people's reviews. The only time I'll do that is if I'm looking for information that a review might contain about a movie. So like if I'm trying to figure out if a movie was based on a book and I can't find any information on the movie, I might look up a review just for that information. But I try to avoid looking at other people's reviews when I'm about to give a review. But I've reviewed a lot of movies, and so a lot of times I like going and seeing what other people think after I've reviewed them. And so I've been looking at Coin-Op TV's reviews lately, just because I like his style. It's a very sort of straightforward, no BS approach to reviews. I like when people are just kind of doing it straight. I'm not as into the bells and whistles, and so you know, but you know, like he reviewed it in some of the movies he's reviewed. He's felt the same about me, some he hasn't. But I've been looking at movies where he's felt differently, and I always appreciate getting a different perspective than my own on stuff like that. So I you know, you know, and again, and when we're doing reviews, I also like when Joel or Adam have differences of opinion than I do, because I feel like that leads to more interesting conversation anyways. If everybody just gets on there and says, we all love it. I mean, you can have a conversation about how you all love something. And if you do, and it's a really sort of strong enthusiasm that the movie creates, then it definitely can be a good conversation. But every once in a while, somebody just doesn't like the movie, and I think that kind of adds something. So I like, you know, not feeling like people have to all share the same opinion either. And I don't think we have to get feisty about it at the same time. Like me and Joel did have a mock debate about Rocky IV at one point that was fun, but when we're doing like a serious review, I don't really want to like argue somebody out of their position. So again, that's just sort of me trying to explain sort of the approach. When I talk about a movie, I try to give as honest of an opinion that I have about it as possible. And a lot of times I do tend to be more of an optimistic viewer. So I think if I go back and look at a lot of my Wuxia reviews, especially, there's a lot of like, I just kind of love the genre. So you got, you know, so there's a curve where everything's kind of, you know, a little bit graded a little more highly than other people might grade them. But that's what I want to give is how I genuinely feel about the movie. Not because what you can do sometimes when you're doing reviews is you can start making them in more calculated ways. So say if you're doing a scale of 1 to 10, you can start thinking, you know, what's the number that I should pick for this movie that's going to make me look X, like going to make me look smart or make me look contrarian or make me look whatever it is. You know, I think that's an easy thing for people to fall into. I try to avoid doing that. I'll give an example. I did a review. I think I'll try to look it up. Let me go onto my blog. Was it the Crimson Charm? No, it was maybe Killer Darts, or was it the Sword? I think it was the Crimson Charm, or it was Killer Darts. Whatever it was, I was in my head as I was watching the movie, I was coming up with the number that I wanted, which is really hard to do, by the way. If you're doing a grading system for a movie, you got to take, when you see that in a review from someone, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because it's really hard to sort of put a number on how you feel about a movie, a book, a song. And so what I try to do is, as I'm watching it, I try to get a sense of where I am. And if I say, okay, this movie is kind of like, I think I'm going to give this a 6. Like, that's kind of what I'm feeling. And I try to get that sense early on so that I can, like, say I'm halfway through a film, which in this case, I think this was, I don't know if it was Killer Darts, but let's just say it was Killer Darts. I'll be watching it. I'll say, okay, I think a 6. And then I'll say, you know what? if this gives me X, I'm going to bump it up to a 6.5. If it gives me Y, I'm going to bump it up to a 7. You start thinking of things that might bump it up a little bit or bump it down. And I think that for me, that's a very helpful way to do it. So like something that I'm always looking for is I'm like, okay, I know that there's going to be payoff at the end. If it's very cathartic, I'll give it a full other point. You know what I mean? Like that's the way that I think about it. And so, but either way, when I finally settled on a score, I looked it up on IMDb just out of curiosity, and it was the same exact score. And for a moment, I was tempted to change it. And I don't know if it was because I was worried people might think, oh, I was just sort of trying to do the same score, or if I just wanted to be different than IMDb. It just bothered me that it had the same rating as me. But I realized that it would be very disingenuous if I kept it different intentionally in order to, do you know what I mean? It just wouldn't have, it would have been, I shouldn't have looked at the number one, because it got into my head the moment I did. But number two, once it was the same and I realized that I had this impulse to change it, I think that just shows you how much of how difficult it can be to assign a rating like that to something and not factor in outside forces when you're doing it. So that's why I try to be as honest as I can, which is really, it's genuinely difficult. Because you're always thinking like, oh, what are people going to think if they think, Brendan loves this shitty movie that everybody hates, what an idiot. So that's the sort of thing that you're going to be thinking, or maybe you have an opinion and the opinion's grounded in some misunderstanding or something that's just not accurate. There's just all kinds of things that can, make you want to like almost hedge your bets, but I try to just be like, nope, this is how I thought. That's just how I think about doing these kind of movies. And I've been meandering now for 30 minutes. Maybe I should probably fall asleep soon. But yeah, so I know I haven't done these in a while. I haven't been in the best of health, and so I don't know how. I'm going to be trying to do more of these if I can, and we're going to try to get another podcast episode up soon. But for all I know, next week I'll be back to recording podcast episodes every other day or something. But I do everything slower now. So it's just, if I'm putting out a book, it comes out slower. If I'm going to record a podcast, it comes out slower. I had the idea to talk about this a while ago, but actually not too long ago, I guess. Maybe that's a lie. Yeah, no, not too long ago. But I've been meaning to do one of these for a long time. That's a more accurate way to put it, and I just haven't. And I've had a lot of ideas for things I wanted to talk about that I never did. Because it's kind of like you got to strike when the iron's hot. Eventually, the idea sort of dissipates, and you don't really have as much passion for whatever it is you want to talk about. So I would say, go to the blog, check out the Crimson Charm review, the Killer Darts review, and I think I have the Sword review as well. And I got Lady Assassin. So I did like a blaze of reviews on the blog. I'll probably, get back to that fairly soon. What was the last one? March 8th. So obviously I'm 10 days out now. So I kind of have to recharge though. I can't do this the way I used to do it. So I will let you go, and I will talk to you later.